Hey guys, dehparticles here, and as of now, September has officially arrived. And you know what that means. Okay, so we may be a few ways away from it actually being Halloween, but it seems people are already getting into the spirit. I recently seen more advertisements for Halloween-related events in my area, along with people setting up shop for Halloween costumes and people joking that it's actually Halloween. It seems people know how to get into the spirit. I think you know where this is going. I think video games are a good way to get into the Halloween spirit. There are a lot of games out there that encompass a horror-related theme, whether it's rather silly or just downright terrifying. But in any case, video games offer a suitable or even not suitable experience for the holiday. My favorite kinds of these games tend to be what's known as survival horror, a series that pits the player against an unprecedented situation where it's a fight for their life, and they have to act smart about it. Although many games have continued and successfully pulled off the formula, I don't think there's one story that's been as provocative in its storytelling than Silent Hill. Silent Hill was a series developed by Konami throughout the late 90s and 2000s, and it seemed to be doing pretty well for itself. But given the combination of many bad decisions and a fallout with one of their most well-known developers, Silent Hill was doomed to have its fall from grace, and nothing has been seen of this series in quite a while. Most people know the series for Silent Hill 2, arguably one of the best games in the franchise, and one that I've wanted to play for a long time but I've never got the chance to, until recently. So in this video, I'm going to be playing Silent Hill 2 for the very first time, and giving my impressions of whether or not I like it, not just as a video game, but as a horror experience as well. The basic way Silent Hill 2 works is the way that other Silent Hill games, or survival horror games before it, work as well. You control the main character through the use of tank controls, which are a bit hard to get used to, but you'll learn it in the nick of time. There's also a menu that you can use to interact with items or other game features that'll help you along the way. And specific to Silent Hill, you'll be equipped with a radio that you can turn on or off that'll allow you to indicate any monsters that are nearby, which I have to say is a really useful feature when playing the game. Silent Hill 2 follows an atmosphere where it's relatively hard to see anything until you move closer to it, so it's very easy to get lost. In the menu I mentioned earlier, there is a map icon that will allow you to access any maps that you found along your journey, but it will also allow you to see any places that you tried to enter but are unable to be entered, or places that you've already explored. And I have to say it's a really useful feature when playing through the game, and something that I used quite a lot as well. This is one part of the survival horror formula that Silent Hill 2 nails perfectly, but another part of it is items. Because this is a survival horror game, you're going to need to rely on a lot of resources to help you stay alive, which stretches to weapons and health items. Luckily, when an item is near reach, the main character, who I should say, his name is James, just keep that in mind, this will be important later on. The main character will tilt their head towards it so that it indicates the player that something is able to be picked up. And although I feel it's not as done well as other horror games, I still think it's a very unique way to take on the formula. And that's another thing. This is a survival horror game, which means that it's very crucial that you stay alive. If you're not able to fight enemies, run away from them as soon as you can. And if you're able to fight them, it's still advised to stay away from them so that you have enough resources to take on other things, like bosses. But if you ever find yourself in a crucial situation, you'll know your health is low if you see static on the icon in the upper left. And that's how Silent Hill 2 works, or at least I believe that's everything. If I'm missing something, it's probably best to save it for the actual playthrough. But what about the game itself? What is it that James is doing, and why is he doing it? I think now would be a good time to go over my interpretation of the story of Silent Hill 2. And although it's not perfect, just know that there will be some spoilers for those who haven't yet played Silent Hill 2. So if you want to go into the game completely blind, skip to this part of the video. The game immediately affirms the role of the main character, James Sunderland, as you start with a cutscene of him looking straight into a mirror. When he exits out of the bathroom he's in, he pulls out a letter from his wife Mary, stating that she's waiting in Silent Hill for James. But the catch is, Mary's dead, and has been for the last 3 years. So the reasoning for why James is going all the way to Silent Hill to look for her is a bit confusing, and even he affirms this himself. But he pushes on. As he continues his journey throughout Silent Hill, things get progressively weirder and weirder, as he meets a cast of characters that appear with similar struggles in James's journey, and monsters who just have the purest singing voices. Among the cast of characters include memorable favorites such as Angela and Eddie, but most prominently is a woman named Maria, who even gets her own side campaign. As James continues his journey, he experiences weirder and weirder things and begins questioning the situation around him. This is where the game can lead itself into several different endings. I'm not exactly familiar on all the endings available, but the one I got seems to be the happiest. Yet there are a lot of seemingly unrelated in-game choices that can impact the course of events, so it's definitely something to look forward to if you're playing for the first time. So after experiencing the story of Silent Hill 2, I took away a lot of things from the game, including stuff that I liked and stuff that I didn't like. I'm going to go over the stuff that I did like first. First of all, despite me playing a game from 2001, I felt that the visuals really aged well. The atmosphere surrounding James definitely aids in that feeling of horror and dread that follows throughout. Not only did I feel this throughout the town of Silent Hill itself, but also several of the buildings I was inside. For example, I felt that the dark atmosphere of the Lakeview Hotel really aided in that sense of searching all of the rooms, or how the labyrinth had noticeably ripped wallpaper. There was always something getting to me as I was exploring the environments, and I feel that this wouldn't be pulled off to the effect that it is without the presence of music. Silent Hill 2 employs a combination of calm overture and unnerving ambience, and this complements the sense of dread and occasional tranquility that follows James throughout his journey. As a first-time player, noticing the sound design of Silent Hill 2 definitely made me uncomfortable in most parts of the game, but I was always able to loosen up in places like the bowling alley or the nightclub. That sense of calming music definitely made me feel like I was taking a break from the game. Looking back, however, I feel that most of my favorite songs from the OST come from the ambient noise itself. Here are just a few of my favorites. As a first-time player, I had very little idea what was going on. Some of the events that were presented to me seemed a bit confusing, and trying to link them all together was just a hassle for me to follow. But I was still interested. Meeting the characters especially always left me with more questions about them. What happened to them? How did they end up in Silent Hill? How does it all connect back to James? There were so many questions that I got from just meeting these characters, and I definitely wanted to know more about the backstories of them. I think playing the game as well also had a hand in the story. As I mentioned earlier, there are many choices that the player can make that alters the course of events and how the game ends, so there's always something different that any person can get depending on their in-game actions, and it's an incentive to play the game to the very end. With everything that I've said so far in regards to Silent Hill 2, along with extra cutscenes and bosses, most notably Pyramid Head, Silent Hill 2 is just a fun horror game, and there's enough story content to keep you hooked and play through it again. Besides the main story, there's also a second campaign that includes Maria, which is a swell experience to go through, and I'm definitely considering playing through the whole game again. Now, despite everything positive I've said about Silent Hill 2 so far, I still have a few complaints with the game. Firstly, as every survival horror fan knows, the controls are usually hard to get used to, but this is relatively excusable because their execution in-game is pretty well done. What isn't well done is when they work in tandem with the camera, which just sucks. Maybe it's an intentional part of the game, but not being able to see what was in front of me sometimes made me avoid what could have been important rooms. I especially noted this in the hospital when each level would just have a lot of enemies. And by not being able to see them, I just felt bombarded trying to attack them all at once. This also stretches to puzzle rooms and boss fights. A good example is when I was fighting Pyramid Head. I was close to beating the boss, but he moved somewhere off camera and I wasn't able to see where I was attacking. I thought that by moving closer I could get a better perspective of where my attacks were hitting, but this actually led me to dying and having to redo the boss all over again, which was just not fun for me at the time. And speaking of not being able to see things, the next problem I have with the game is the atmosphere. More specifically, when things got dark. And they got really dark. After the hospital I mentioned earlier, I was in the other world of Silent Hill, which was just completely shrouded in darkness, which made it especially hard to be able to see things past the normal flashlight that was equipped. Maybe this is just a minor complaint on my part and was probably based on the conditions I was playing the game in, but this also led to other issues. Finding items is especially hard when you're completely shrouded in darkness, even past the mechanic of James turning his head to indicate that they're there. Not only does this mean it's difficult to actually face the character in the correct way in order to pick up the item, but also makes finding the individual places to get the items frustrating. When I was in the other world, I had to go to the park and look for a statue that had a hole with a key item in it. I kept referring back to the map and retracing my steps, but it didn't take me until minutes at a time in order to actually find the statue. Or you can just take it inside and try to open every door in the building. Nope. 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 Nuh-uh. Didn't work. Nope. As I've mentioned before, the story of Silent Hill 2 is very interesting, but also as I've mentioned before, it was very hard to understand as a first-time player. Trying to take everything at face value was very confusing, which seems to be the game's intention as there is underlying stuff that I haven't yet noticed. But for first-time players, this is just something to note when you go into play. If you're even able to play it, because unfortunately the game is very hard to come by now, even with its critical acclaim. In total, your choices are the original versions, the buggy old PC port, the enhanced mod for the PC port, or the HD collection. I would definitely recommend getting the enhanced mod edition if you're able to find a copy of the PC port, but otherwise your best bet is trying to find the original version. But although I had my share of complaints with the game, I still felt it was a really solid title. So after all I've said about the game, how does it hold up 20 years later? On the eve of Silent Hill 2's 20th anniversary, I'm glad I got to play it for the very first time. A lot of aspects that I've noticed about the game formulate into one of the biggest survival horror experiences I've ever had the pleasure of playing, so I can understand why veteran players say that this game is one of the best in the entire series. As of now, I don't have enough experience with the series to comment on any of the underlying themes or how this game relates to all the rest, but it's a game that I definitely enjoyed and I'm really interested to try out other installments. Although it seems like the game will never return in an official and actually playable fashion, Silent Hill 2 is a game that feels right for the time that I'm playing it. And I would definitely recommend it if you're into horror games or just want to play a really good game. But I'm curious to know, have you ever played Silent Hill 2? And if so, what are your thoughts? Leave a comment down below and let me know. But as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all in the next video. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm a bit late uploading to my channel due to school stuff and just other real life circumstances, but hopefully I'll be able to return to a somewhat consistent schedule from here on out. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing. It really helped the channel out. If you want to get notified about new uploads, consider hitting the notification bell or checking out my Twitter. Either one works out. And if you want to see my previous video, there will be links on screen and in the description. But yeah guys, that's about it from me. Again, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.